Anna Mills has been teaching college English in the San Francisco Bay Area for about 20 years. And these days, she spends a lot of time experimenting with the latest AI tools to figure out the pros and cons of using them for learning. A couple of months ago, she made this video that was kind of surprising, demonstrating new AI tools that let students direct a bot to surf the web for them. She wanted to make it clear to people who haven't been paying a lot of attention to this agentic AI trend that this technology has some potential negative side effects for teachers. So she fired up the learning management system she uses for one of her courses, clicked over to the student view of things, and typed a prompt that directed the bot to take the quiz for her. And the tool did it.
It's going to navigate. You can see it clicking. It's found the quizzes.
It's kind of strange to watch the cursor move on its own. It's like watching the steering wheel turn itself in a driverless car. I asked Anna to talk me through what was happening as we watched this short video demo. The browser is called Comet. It's by the AI company Perplexity. But actually, other AI giants are starting to make similar AI-powered browsers that can do this as well. For instance, the folks behind ChatGPT now make an agentic AI browser called Atlas. And so as we're watching you, you're typing complete all the quizzes in this course. Like that's what you're asking the browser to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's reporting back in text like what it's doing. And we're watching the cursor move.
Mm-hmm.
Because the student has given over their browser to this bot. And it's clicked on quizzes. And now I can see quiz on 13.3, subject-verb agreement.
Mm-hmm. And it narrates what it's doing, and you can see that there's no hesitation. It's just, I'm going to complete this quiz for the user. That's my job.
Yeah, so you've basically, the student, in this case, this fictional student, is basically saying, agentic AI browser, you are my assistant. Go do the quiz for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that is possible with this tool that's out there today.
Yeah, and it's very simple. It's very easy. It just feels like you're using Google Chrome. And it's free for students. Perplexity has made it free. They've even marketed this to students. It's ridiculously simple. You know, it's not sort of for the early adopters and the techies to sort of jerry-rig, right? It's just, yes, it will do this for you, and you can walk away and never see the quiz and never know if that quiz was even interesting or motivating or not.
A few years ago, when ChatGPT first came out, students quickly figured out how to use the new AI chatbots to write essays for them in ways that are really hard to detect. That has triggered a wave of concern that writing assignments kind of need to change. And there's a struggle going on to try to figure out, how do we guarantee that an essay represents the student's thinking and mastery of the material? This academic year, a new kind of AI tool has burst suddenly on the scene called Agentic AI. And it has led even some fans of AI to worry about a new kind of cheating. This short video demo, which I'll link to in the show notes, it shows what this concern looks like. A student asking a bot to literally take over their browser and complete online quizzes and assignments in their name. And the student doesn't even need to stick around and watch. But in this case, according to Anna Mills and a growing number of college instructors, there might be an easy fix that AI companies could do to remedy the situation. Welcome to Learning Curve, a podcast about how education is adapting to the rise of generative AI. I'm Jeff Young, a longtime education journalist. For months now, there's been a growing concern on social media about agentic AI and academic integrity. And Anna Mills seemed like the perfect person to contact to talk through these issues. Because she's not some critic of AI. She's looking for ways to make these tools work for educators.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I'm a volunteer advisor on an app, My Essay Feedback, where we're inviting students to engage with AI feedback on their writing. I'm, fascinated, curious, excited to try these things. And definitely not, completely opposed to AI. This seems like a very different and obvious kind of case where it's not going to help their learning, right?
First, I wanted to cover the basics here. So I asked Anna to give us a quick elevator pitch of what agentic AI is and what are some of the broader applications beyond education.
All the big AI companies have been going in this direction for a while. And basically, agentic AI is AI that does more things more autonomously. Um, and that can look like a lot of different things, but really the big news is that now there are browsers that will not only chat with you about what's on the website that you're looking at, but they will actually click, move the cursor, fill out forms, and take action on that website on your behalf. Um, so they're taking the action online rather than just chatting with you about it and giving you input. And that's the big paradigm shift I think that we're looking at.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of, as we enter into 2026 here, it's still see it as like this is going to be the year of agentic AI, or that it's going to grow as an idea that the companies are at least pushing, if you will, whether it catches on or not. It feels like something that many of the AI companies are really behind and really pushing, like I said.
Yeah. And I think this fall is kind of a ChatGPT moment for it because previously this was more experimental and clunky and expensive. So only a few people had tried it and it hadn't worked that well. Um, and now we have big companies, Perplexity, OpenAI, and Anthropic putting out these agentic browsers that you can use at a $20 a month level. It's not exorbitant. And, even Perplexity is offering various long free trials to students and things like that. So it's suddenly readily accessible that you can just tell a chatbot, go do this thing for me online, and then you just walk away. And it's
You could be having lunch with a friend or reading whatever, doing whatever it is you want to be doing is the idea. And I guess in a non-education context, a selling point, I think one of the use cases I see is like it'll like book your airline ticket, or is that the kind of thing that is this sort of basic, sales pitch is that it can do these tasks that are kind of mundane and bureaucratic for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's very appealing to think that we could have a personal assistant working on our behalf on annoying bureaucratic tasks. And I've used an agent for things like setting up a when is good meeting poll for me.
Sure.
And
Yeah, that's a little bit tedious to just say, grab like a doodle pull and like come up with it and send it out. Is that the kind of thing you mean?
yeah, exactly. And you can have supervision over them to the extent that you want. You can be saying, check in with me before you do X, or only do this website, or, ask me questions. So you can supervise it to the extent that you want to. Um, but, who doesn't want a personal assistant, right?
Right.
Even
And
if it's not perfect.
that's the metaphor. I as listeners to my work know, like metaphors are so interesting to me of like how we conceptualize these tools, which are very abstract and kind of, especially things like generative AI feel like a tool looking for a solution. Like a use case a lot of times, and the metaphors are what will line up, like whether it's happened earlier with like windows on your computer, like what is a window? It's not really a window, but it's like it's using something we know or familiar with. And like you said, I think really agentic really moves it from something you're like almost like a search engine where you're like asking for information to an assistant, to like bossing around some robot, if you will, to go do something for you that is your proxy.
Yes, I think that's a good metaphor, and it shows why they think this will be hugely successful because they think everybody wants this, right? It's sort of a coworker, a subordinate that can do more than just chat.
Okay, so that's agentic AI broadly. So what is different about this technology compared to earlier chatbots?
Well, I think, when you're going to make a case for AI supporting learning, that's always when the student is engaged with the AI about
Sure.
the learning. They're still doing something, they're still articulating something, taking some action. And an agentic browser shortcuts all of that. It's not asking anything of the student. And so this learning environment, online learning environment, that's been designed for the student's engagement is now being taken over by a bot. And there's no learning happening, right? This is very different from, say, if you want to integrate AI into your ed tech in some way that stimulates student thinking or is Socratic.
Sure.
This is the opposite of that, right?
And I've even seen examples, and I've talked to many students for this podcast and in my previous reporting, where, the student feels some agency when they're directing ChatGPT or some other bot to when they're thinking up like, okay, I'm going to prompt it to do this. And I hear students even say like, I worked with the bot to make this, or like I had some role in this. But, and you could argue how much they're learning in some of the cases, but in this case, it is another step. You're saying it's like they're literally clicking the button and leaving, maybe, or not having to do any contribution.
Yeah, and I think like I tend to want to talk to people who are excited about AI and people who are very critical of it. And I feel like this is an issue where we can agree, you know.
I see.
And maybe we can make some progress. Because it's if we want to build AI literacy, that's about building habits of engaging with AI and directing it and iterating and being skeptical of it and trying different techniques. And, if you're just going to let an agentic browser loose in a learning management system and walk away, there's no AI literacy being built there. The students are not being prepared either to understand the material or to work better with AI in future necessarily.
For what it's worth, I have seen some fans of Agentic AI argue that students should be exposed to this technology as part of AI literacy. Just last month, an academic paper that was supported by Perplexity, it was titled The Adoption and Usage of AI Agents. It argued, quote, equipping citizens and students with the skills to leverage AI agents effectively and preparing them for a near future in which such agents are embedded in work and everyday life. Still, I think it's fair to say there's got to be a more productive way to learn about AI agents than cheating on your quiz.
Maybe someone will come up with something that could support learning that it could be used for. That's possible. I haven't really thought of anything yet.
Yeah.
And, there's no reason that that bots should be allowed to masquerade as students in learning management systems. Like, we don't need that. It doesn't make sense. The learning management system is for the human to learn.
Right. And these are like Blackboard and Canvas. These are the basically the interface that every student, and professor kind of comes to as their portal to do their assignments and so okay.
Other edtech software too. I mean,
Sure.
Any edtech online platform is susceptible to this. And those platforms are designed for humans, right? Nobody's getting value out of it if the bot is like checking off boxes and posting to discussion forums or annotating texts or taking quizzes. Yeah.
I wanted to play one other quick clip that is a piece of advertising that ran on Perplexity's social media a couple months ago, I believe it was. So I'm going to share my screen again.
You're going to make your life 10 times better with these 3 prompts. Comic is your first experience where AI actually does the work for you. Ask it to do literally anything, but here are the best prompts to get started. Comic can summarize your lecture notes without you needing to download them.
This little video post on Perplexity's Instagram feed, it shows a college-age woman in what looks like a dorm room showing this technology on her laptop.
I can even take quizzes for you, but I'm not the one who's telling you this.
And so there is this way in which I think some of the other companies, not to pick only on Perplexity, but their browser is certainly one of them. Like you said, other AI companies have done some similar agentic browsers and can do other things. But in this advertising, I guess there has been other advertising. I think some of the ones that were up actually have been taken down.
Yes,
some of the ones
I noticed that.
And
yeah.
so as someone familiar with some of the advertising out there, it seems like there is this attitude in the advertising campaign that some of these companies have done of like to students saying, hey, this assistant will help you so you can focus on the other things you don't do. It'll do the busy work for you is the implication, I think. And so there is this sense that that companies themselves are proposing this to student users as a use case.
Yes, I think Perplexity is the only one I've seen do that explicitly.
Mm.
But what really strikes me is that all of these companies have big departments dedicated to telling their systems what to do and what not to do, giving them instructions, testing them to see if they will do bad things. It's a whole thing called red teaming, right?
In other words, the idea of putting guardrails on these tools is actually pretty standard. Basically, there are things that these browsers refuse to do. When I did a search on Perplexity asking for examples, here is what it said. Comet inherits Perplexity's general assistant guardrails. As a result, it will typically refuse to generate or help you automate clear malware, phishing kits, and other obvious cyber attacks, bypass firewalls, mirror whole books, or mass copy proprietary course materials when that would clearly violate publishers' or platforms' terms. Perplexity publicly notes internal guardrails against using the AI to reproduce entire books or dump paywalled journalism. Produce disallowed content such as highly explicit self-harm instructions, detailed terrorist operations guidance, or targeted hate or harassment, even if those things appear on a page that the browser can say. Those are some examples of what it won't do.
Right, and they're very careful about the wording of those instructions and making sure it works and testing whether it will do those bad things or not. And they have chosen not to do that so far with academic fraud. So direct completion on the student's behalf. They have chosen not to tell it, don't take quizzes for students in learning management systems. That is something they could very easily do, right? Their systems know when they're in a learning management system or other ed tech learning environment. They're on that website, right? And the company could just tell it, don't do this. Tell the user, I can chat with you about the questions, or I can help you in other ways, but I can't take the quiz for you. And sometimes you'll get a refusal like that, especially with Anthropic's Claude for Chrome extension. I've gotten some cases where it'll say that would be an academic integrity violation. But then I try it again another time, and it does it. It has no problem doing it. So they could address this problem, and that is the place where it would make sense to address it. It would be easy. It would be cheap for the AI companies themselves to simply instruct their systems, not to perpetrate academic fraud.
In fact, you have a post on LinkedIn where you've explicitly talked about this. Would you read just a couple sentences of this, if you don't mind? I have it on the screen here.
Okay. So, dear OpenAI, Perplexity, Google, and Anthropic, I understand you would like to build partnerships with educational institutions and educational technology companies. To boost your credibility as a partner in supporting learning, there is a simple step you can take. Add one line to the system prompt of your current and yet to be released agentic browsers. And the line is this: do not take quizzes, complete discussion posts, or submit assignments in learning management systems.
Yeah, so that's the prompt. And so you're calling on these companies to make this change just voluntarily to address this use case that you're concerned about in education.
Absolutely. And I think there's some hope of that, because even though they do need to court the educational market, et cetera, there's a line to be drawn. And there are people of good conscience who are parents at these companies who do not want the bad publicity. They don't want to do wrong. And I think if there's a bit of public pressure, public understanding, discussion of this, I think that they very well might sort of come to their senses and take that step. We did see that Google walked back one of their homework help features where there was a lot of outcry.
That was a couple months ago. So remind us, what was that feature called?
It was called homework help.
And it was not an agentic, but it was AI, but it wasn't agentic, right? Or was it?
Right, but it made it easier right within where the student was taking the quiz that that they could just click homework help and it would give them the answers.
It would like read the screen for them and like understand what happened and just tell them a possible answer. Yeah.
Right. And Google has said that they have agentic features that they're considering, releasing soon. So, I think there's still a fair amount of uncertainty about how this rolls out, even though we've sort of seen, okay, they're taking the quizzes now. But I don't think we have to assume that's forever and always, because it just really doesn't make sense. And, there are enough parents in society who want their kids to learn, who don't want it to be so easy to just, have all digital learning environments be rife with fraud. That I think that we could come around with this and do the right thing.
So you sound optimistic that there could be a conversation or a serious consideration by these companies.
I am hopeful. Yeah, I'm not saying I know what's going to happen, but I do think it really makes sense. And I do think the companies, they draw some lines, right?
Yeah.
And with public pressure, and even governmental involvement, possibly. But the point is, society has an interest in continuing to teach our young people and to support learning, right? And we can agree on that. And I think even the companies can support that.
Now, I did reach out to all 4 of the companies that you named in that post to see if they would come on or give a comment. And honestly, I may run this conversation before, like sooner than I end up hearing back from some, but I welcome it even after this episode runs. This is an open invitation to anyone from those companies to come talk about this because I'm really interested in their perspective and hearing their case. But I haven't heard back yet. But there is a reporter from The Verge, you may have seen this article that ran recently, that got a comment from a spokesperson from Perplexity, Bijoli Shah, who said, and I'm going to read this quote from this Perplexity spokesperson. She said, "Every learning tool since the abacus has been used for cheating. What generations of wise people have known since then is cheaters in school ultimately only cheat themselves." And so I guess in some ways I took this as students shouldn't cheat. And it's kind of on the students to not misuse a tool like this. But what do you say to that argument?
Well, what about the value of the course credits and the degree that the honest student, has paid for and put the work in and done the learning, and they want to then have the credibility, but employers don't know if that was actually represents any learning or not. That's not fair to the honest student, and it undermines, the value of our educational system in preparing people for the workforce and helping employers understand where their prospective employees are coming from. And it also, it's true there's always been cheating, but if you make it extremely easy and socially acceptable because it just seems like I'm using my browser, then it's much more tempting. And you have students who are more vulnerable, who are struggling, who have low confidence, who are working so much they don't have time, more tempted. And they're the ones who are going to miss out on learning if they take that path. So you get much more learning loss if you make it much easier. And, this is also quite different because this is saying bots can pretend to be humans, no problem, right? There's no reason we need to say that. We don't need to let bots pretend to be humans online. That's a new thing, right?
Yeah, sure.
That's not the abacus.
I hear this, I'm sure you hear it too, with calculators all the time. It's like, we got through calculators and everything's fine, is the implication. But I think it's hard to argue that this is just like a calculator, even.
No, because with a calculator, you can say, don't use it. Take this assessment without using it. And that's what we say for the first, various years of the child's schooling, because that's what they need to learn. So we need ways to know when it's the student and when it's the student plus a machine. And to say, for this learning moment, you need to not use it. And later, maybe you'll use it, right? And so we need that transparency, and we can have it, right? We can say, no, the bot is not going to do this in the learning management system.
Yeah, it's like, this is the idea of the guardrail, and in a way, and I think the metaphor you're making is, well, in Abacus, there is a kind of guardrail, so to speak, in that we know when a student is using an Abacus or not, or like some equivalent, or we've developed social norms so that we can create testing environments that include something like a calculator or don't. And this technology short circuits are the currently worked out systems. And so a guardrail is one way you're proposing that the companies could just build in to just not let it do this thing.
Right. And I think that, as a matter of access to learning, we need to the extent we can, we need to protect learning in digital spaces, because that's a place where a lot of learning can and does happen. And there's no reason to throw that out the window if we could just have some guardrails. Yes, we might need to do more proctored, observed assessments in future to some extent, but why not just tell the bots to stay out of the learning spaces and not actually, do things for the students? Why not take that action and preserve some more space for learning online when we need it to be online?
After the break, what are other things instructors and colleges can do to safeguard assignments and change teaching now that agentic AI tools are on the scene? Stay with us. Hey, everybody. I wanted to tell you about another podcast that I think you'll enjoy. College Matters from the Chronicle. College Matters is a weekly show from the Chronicle of Higher Education, and it's a great resource for news and analysis about colleges and universities. The host, Jack Stripling, is my former colleague at the Chronicle, who has covered and investigated higher ed for 2 decades. Jack really knows his stuff, and I think you'll get a kick out of his conversations with reporters and newsmakers. So check out College Matters on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Now back to the episode. Just to be clear, I'm actually not seeing signs that there are tons of students out there using agentic AI browsers to do quizzes for them. In the episode I did earlier this season, where I talked to dozens of students at the University of Minnesota about their AI use, you should check that out if you haven't heard it. None of the students mentioned agentic browsers. They were out then, but I think a lot of the students I talked to didn't even seem to know they existed, or maybe they'd vaguely heard about it when I asked. And I haven't seen surveys either that say this is a huge specific use that's growing. But it is pretty early, so it'll be interesting to see if those do start to pop up. So at least anecdotally, I think this isn't growing as fast as using a chatbot to write an essay. I think this feels a lot more like blatant cheating than even putting a prompt in a chatbot to write a draft of an essay that maybe the student feels like, oh, they did some work on. This is clearly like a case of like, I'm doing something wrong, I think. And I think a lot of the students, probably the majority, are not like looking for ways to cheat, and they actually really want to learn. Still, it seems like this issue of agentic browsers going into learning management systems and taking quizzes, it seems like there's actually a clear technological solution that would work in a way that it's not the case for essays or these other freeform assignments. It seems like there is this point where if these makers of agentic browsers put in the guardrail, that it probably would be pretty effective. So I was curious to know whether Anna has heard back from any of the companies that she named in her post, responding to her post and her call to put in guardrails.
I heard back on an earlier post from a representative of Instructor, Canvas.
Instructor is the company that makes one of the most popular learning management systems, right?
And I appreciated that. She said they were talking with OpenAI about this issue because they are in partnership with OpenAI on another level to bring some AI features into their system. And so that was interesting. A Blackboard, another learning management system, has a blog post out where they've said, we can't do anything about it.
I saw that. So in other words, from their perspective, because that's another level you could imagine a guardrail is if the learning management system just said, don't allow an AI agent, is that, and that the company representatives, at least the Blackboard ones, pretty much suggested that's not like a thing they can do easily.
Right. And I think even the response from Canvas suggests that they don't think they can block it themselves. They need OpenAI to work with them if they're going to address it. And so far I haven't heard. I'm hoping we will hear. I'm interested to see if there are some, high profile articles that bring those companies in, that get them to respond. We've made a statement with the Modern Language Association about agents in learning management systems. And I think people are just realizing, right? I think this may be the semester or the quarter when we see a little more public pressure and awareness and response from the companies.
Yeah, we've all been going to get through the end of the year, and now it's between semesters. Maybe there's some chance to have this discussion. That's interesting. So you mentioned this work with the Modern Language Association that you're part of. I see you're on the AI task force at the MLA. And in October, I see you released a statement that was about AI agents at your task force. I will put the link to the statement in the show notes. People should read the whole thing. But at the end, I thought it was really interesting. Again, you're calling for these companies to put in guardrails. But you say there's a final statement here.
Yeah. So if we do not act, we risk seeing the development of a fully automated loop in which assignments are generated by AI with the support of a learning management system. AI-generated content is submitted by an agentic browser on behalf of the student, and AI-driven metrics evaluate the work on behalf of the instructor.
Wow, so that's a pretty dark vision of an automated, like everything automated. I think the interesting thing to me when I saw that is, in a way, you're also implicating that instructors could be part of using AI to shortcut as well. In some way, as I read that. But also, you mentioned, what do you mean by AI-driven metrics in this case?
Well, I think, there are a million ways that we could use AI to support all kinds of teaching activities, of data analysis related to online learning. And so if we use AI in all of those ways, including sort of analyzing which students need help and what kind of help and providing that help and, maybe customizing their learning experience. And so coming up with all of the instructional content. And then the student, though, is going to know that. And it's very, that may be the incentive. In fact, one of Perplexity's ads talked about, well, my instructor is using it to do X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to have my revenge by using this browser to autocomplete my assignments.
There are actually several of these ads circulating on social media, again, featuring college-age students. Here is one example.
My teacher just sent us a rough email saying if he catches us using AI, he's gonna fail us and just like crashing out on the whole class. But at the bottom of the email, it says sent with comment assistant. So I looked it up and it's not even like regular AI. What do you mean it can literally reply to DMs for you? Like what? What's even crazier is what people are having it do on TikTok. Having comment literally do their quizzes, even their homework. So yeah, I know what I'm gonna be using on all of his assignments this year.
And I did an episode where I talked to a student at Northeastern who feels like she caught her professor using AI to make lecture slides in ways that weren't disclosed. And she, asked for her money back in the course because she felt like this was a derelict, giving up an abdication of his job. And so there's this potential all around to misuse AI, if you will. Or overuse
Yeah, and I think it all speaks to this sense of, we learn in the context of relationships. And if we don't know when there's a human and when there isn't, and what is human and what is not, then how can we feel we're anybody cares about our learning or what we're saying or how we're developing? And so I think transparency about what is AI and what isn't is essential so that we can continue supporting learning, so we can bring in relationship when it helps, so that we can trust that if somebody's communicating with us online, that we know who that is, that that's a person, and that if they say they care, they actually care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's both sides need to not be agents, AI bots.
Right. And if you have that kind of transparency and you design for that, then maybe you can bring AI in limited ways where it supports that and it doesn't get in the way and undermine that trust and that motivation that comes out of being in communication with other people. Most people learn in a social way. Most people don't learn in isolation, just in relation to text or a bot.
I think this issue of the guardrails is definitely one that I think we'll keep hearing about in the next, as these tools are evolving. And this is a time where we've seen a lot of change, and so it'll be interesting to see if some of these calls get heated. In the meantime, or maybe some do and some don't, I don't know. Is there any other advice you have for professors or something you're trying yourself to mitigate this? Like, are you worried that your own students are using these agentic AI tools? Yeah. And what do you do? What do you do about this in the meantime?
Well, there's a couple things. There are some great educators, kind of led by Tim Mousel, who are working on sort of stopgap measures in instructional design that could make it harder to use agents. Some folks like Colorado State and Cornell have put out statements on using lockdown browsers for quizzes online. So that's sort of an app that the student has to use to take the quiz.
Which will literally, if they have to take the quiz with a tool that makes sure there's no agentic AI.
Right, right. And that is something additional that institutions have to pay for. But it could be a stopgap measure. It's also not perfect because they could have another device where they're, using the AI. But
oh wow! So they could sneak a look at an AI chatbot on a phone or something is the idea. They could. There's ways to get around even this if a student is
they can
pushing
have a second
enough.
device where they're doing whatever they want. And then, exactly.
Okay.
But I think for academic integrity and AI, we've got to have a bunch of strategies at once, starting with intrinsic motivation. Why are we doing this? And helping students to do it and not to be intimidated and to feel supported. So for some people, ungrading and having a lot of sort of process assignments that are very open and supportive, having resources, those are all key first steps, right? And I don't feel like they're fully enough. So I think, having synchronous check-ins with students,
like a call, like you and I are having, like something where you're literally, talking to them. Yeah.
Video, or having them do video recordings about their process, audio recordings, having different formats of assessment, that might be a little harder for an agentic browser to just autocomplete. And combining with some proctored assessment, ideally, I think we may need to shift our systems to, even with online courses, have some proctored assessment in testing centers or libraries. That's an approach coming out of Australia, the 2-lane approach, where it's like some things you don't worry about monitoring, and then you have these high stakes assessments where you are observing the student.
One of the points you've made is that a lot of college courses happen online these days. And it seems like these agentic browsers are a particular thorn in the side to that approach, if you will.
They are, but I think even for the courses that are not online, more and more happens in the learning management system. And yes, you can do some of the work in class with Blue Books, but really, in order to accomplish the learning objectives, you need more time than that. You need to be able to do more in class that's not just have them sit down and write, or and so, I think it's a need that's shared.
So it's not just online, but it's all types
Right.
of
I mean,
college
most
courses,
classes
potentially.
are really hybrid classes these days. And institutions are encouraging instructors to do more with learning management systems. There are great approaches that involve online learning that are supportive, social annotation. There are all kinds of great collaborative learning approaches that are facilitated by ed tech tools. So it really doesn't make sense to just abandon those. So I think it's in the shared interest of both online and in-person instructors to address this.
In a way, just kind of looking at the trends in the last 5-10 years, I think in a way there was, these tools came out, they were slowly purchased by colleges, like learning management systems, and they had a lot of features that were unused. And then the pandemic happened, and it feels like there was a lot more learning on both instructors and students on how to do some, learning. It wasn't all perfect by any means, but, it seems like people kind of got better at doing some remote learning. And now this trend, it sounds like you're worried, could kind of cut into that a little bit. This agentic AI.
Right. And even for in-person classes, because, I know instructors in my department who are having students do all their writing in class, and they have said very openly, this means I can't do a lot of the things. I can't teach a lot of the things I used to teach. I can't do a lot of the learning activities I used to do in class because I have to just have the students write.
Because of time, essentially, a lot.
Right. And so we got to look at the learning loss that might be happening because of that, too.
So the solutions to this technology cause some other unintended side effects, potentially. Like if you have more Blue Books and you have more time where you're devoting in a proctored way, something else is lost.
Right. I mean, my approach is like, let's improve how the technology works to support learning rather than just walking away from the technology. Let's try to, work together with the companies, with ed tech, with big AI, with government, with teachers, so that, the technology can actually support the learning rather than getting in the way and having us have to say, oh, we renounce this.
As far as next steps, are there other, I know you're talking to folks like me and getting the word out about your thought here and your argument. Are there other things you or others that are talking about this are kind of do next to try to approach the companies? Or
yeah, I think it would be great if we ask our organizations to take this on, to address it, to speak out about it, and to put pressure on the companies to
organizations like colleges.
Like colleges, like our IT departments, like professional associations like the MLA, like teachers unions, like parent-teacher associations. I think we can work with K-12. I think, there are a lot of organizations that could speak out. And I'd love to see more journalists like yourself, addressing it, asking the companies, and, also just raising awareness that this is a new thing in AI, and it has new implications, and it's time to address it.
As I finished putting this together, I did hear back from a representative from Google about possibly setting up an interview. And I'm going to keep trying to set up interviews with all of these AI providers if I can. So I hope this is part one of what will hopefully be a dialogue about what kind of guardrails that AI providers should consider when it comes to education. And how will these companies work with educators and educational institutions to talk through what those could and should be. This has been Learning Curve. I hope you'll follow the show wherever you listen if you're not already, and tell a friend about the show or share it on social media to help spread the word. You can head to learningcurve.fm to get show notes and sign up for our newsletter. And I always welcome feedback at jeff@learningcurve.fm. Music for this episode was by Komaku, and our show art this episode is by Midjourney. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Until then, Happy New Year, and thanks for listening.